I never thought I'd be the kind of person to work a crazy graveyard shift at some gas station out in the middle of nowhere. But here I am, saying yes to Mr. Riley like it's just normal.
Yeah, no big deal,
I told him.
I can handle the late shift.
Back then, I'd get all shaky just thinking about being somewhere so quiet, alone with my own head. But now, it feels like the only peace I got. Ain't no customers past 11. Just the occasional trucker or someone lost who needs directions back to the highway. So, it's mostly just me, my homework, and my headphones. Got a little playlist going, old songs, stuff I saved back when I thought music was gonna be my thing. Little reminders of what I left behind. I keep the volume low enough to hear the bell on the door, in case someone walks in. But it's loud enough to drown out the creaks of the building. Night shifts are quiet. Real quiet. Crazy quiet sometimes. Just me, sitting under the buzzing lights, eyes on my notes, but feeling like someone's watching me, even though I know they ain't. The only visitors are the lights flickering outside, or maybe the moths hitting the glass. When the clock hit midnight, I let out a long breath, relief rushing in as I flipped the closed sign and locked the door. Quiet nights, nothing strange. Just me, my textbooks, and a half-awake delivery truck driver who came in for a pack of cigarettes and 2 energy drinks, mumbling something crazy about a long haul ahead. Outside, the bus was waiting at the stop, headlights dim like it's tired, just sitting there. I walked over, keys digging into my bag, and climbed on, hit with the usual smell. Mildew, body odor, and old puke. It's like that every time. The bus smell, mixed with cleaner that never really does the job. The driver nodded when I sat in my usual seat by the window. The bus lurched forward, pulling away from the stop, and the world outside turned into streaks of dark trees and dim streetlights. Every now and then, the bus hit a bump, and I'd jerk in my seat, my headphones sliding off. But I kept the music low, just enough to fill the silence, watching the world slip by in the dark, with that weird, crazy smell sticking to me the whole ride. The bus felt heavy with quiet. As I blinked myself awake, eyes slow to adjust to the dim lights. I looked out the window, expecting to see the usual blur of passing streets. But instead, there was just a big, cracked lot, all foggy. A sign barely showed in the mist. Park and ride. No cars, no other buses. Just the fog, curling around weeds growing through the cracked concrete. And a couple of busted lampposts, throwing weak lights that flickered in the gloom. I pulled off my headphones and let them hang around my neck, the silence now thick as I heard every little sound. I called out, "Hello?" But my voice just bounced back at me, dead in the air. I stood up, walking down the aisle, my steps too loud in the quiet, heading towards the driver's seat. It was empty. His jacket was hanging on the back, like he'd just stepped away, but the doors were locked. My skin started crawling, like something wasn't right. I pulled out my phone, tried turning it on. Blank screen. Dead. My stomach twisted, but I noticed the charger coiled by the driver's seat. I plugged it in, thankful it fit, and a tiny red light blinked on. A bit of relief washed over me. It'd take a few minutes to power up, but at least it was something. I slumped into the driver's seat, staring out at the fog. The shadows dancing around the lights as I waited. The minutes dragged on, the silence wrapping around me like the mist. As I sat there, I started feeling that loneliness creep in, mixing with the anxiety that had gnawed at me since the second I stepped on this bus. My fingers drummed on the armrest, the tapping sound too loud in the silence, making everything worse. I tried to focus on the faint glow of my phone charging, but my mind kept wandering to the fog outside, wondering what might be out there watching me. I stared at the red light flickering on my phone, willing it to hurry up. My stomach was tight. My mind was all over the place. The phone finally powered up, and I wasted no time dialing my brother. It rang and rang, but he didn't pick up. I called again, my finger pressing the button harder, like that'd make him answer. Nothing. I sat there staring at the screen, feeling the quiet close in around me. I didn't know who else to call. Maybe Mr. Riley? But I didn't want to bother him, especially not this late. He'd probably tell me to suck it up and handle it myself. I thought about calling a cab, but that wasn't gonna work. I had no money for that. No way to get out of here unless someone came for me. I kept thinking the bus driver would come back any second. Maybe he just stepped off for a minute, right? But the minutes stretched on, one after another, dragging until I started feeling some kind of trapped feeling. I tried not to think about it, but every time I heard a sound, I looked up, expecting to see him walk through the door. And every time, it was wrong. Then, the lights flickered once, and again. Then, just like that, they went out. The whole bus was crazy dark, except for the dim glow from the charger, now barely visible. My breath hitched, and I shivered, pulling my jacket tighter around me. The air felt colder all of a sudden, like the temperature dropped 10 degrees in a blink. I glanced at my phone. 1 a.m. The silence was thick, pressing in from all sides. No driver, no lights. Just me, sitting in this cold, empty bus with nothing but my own thoughts. I shook my head, trying to push away the creeping feeling that something wasn't right. I thought about waiting longer. Maybe he was just messing with me, right? Maybe he was gonna come back, tell me it's all fine, and we'd just go on like normal. But I couldn't shake the feeling that the longer I stayed here, the worse it was gonna get. I pulled my legs up to my chest and wrapped my arms around them. The fog outside pressed up against the windows, like it was trying to swallow the whole bus. I wanted to call someone, anyone, but I didn't know who. There was nobody else. Just me, the dead phone, and the fog. The sound of something outside the bus made me sit up and look around out the windows. I couldn't see nothing until I saw this guy come running up alongside the bus. He looked like a homeless person, and his eyes were crazy scared. And I got scared. I don't panic well. And I just sat there, staring at him while he hit and kicked the door and yelled at me to let him in. Even if I wasn't too scared to move out the seat or wanted to let him in, I didn't know how to unlock those doors and let him in. They open automatically when the bus isn't moving, and I had no idea how to turn on the bus or open the doors. He was out there jumping around, acting all crazy, when he suddenly stopped and looked at something emerging from the fog. His back was to me, and I couldn't see his face. But he was pushing himself against the bus like he was trying to phase through the door to the safety inside, or something. I followed the direction he was looking, and at first, it was just this blurry shape, like a big white trash bag rolling along the ground or something. For about half a second, then I could see it too, and it is hard to remember. It was like something out of a horror movie or something. It didn't look real to me. I could hear a loud shriek that wouldn't stop, and I realized I was screaming. I covered my eyes, and the vision of that thing crawling on all fours, coming towards us, on my eyelids. I could still see it, somehow clearer when I had my hands over my eyes. It was moving almost sideways, coming at him low on the ground. It was like a person, except with its arms too long and skinny, and its legs bent all wrong. Like it could only crawl along like that. The fog was a clean white color, and its skin was a sickly, almost gray color. And its face was just a weird shaped head with no eyes or ears or nose or lips or hair. Just this huge white football head and a huge mouth full of human teeth. The man outside was screaming in pain and terror, and I refused to look. The creature, the gray crawler, was biting him. I glanced a couple of times and only saw a blur of movement, and it scuttled all over him, biting chunks out of him. Then, after what seemed like an endless amount of violence and screaming, his flailing was striking the bus over and over in loud thumps. The guy collapsed to the ground, twitching. The creature let out a sound like a pinched version of a dinosaur roaring. I had lowered my shaking hands from my face, and somehow they had found my headphones and were playing some of my music in my ears. I have no idea I did that, but as I watched, I was hearing my music, and my trembling hands were checking my body for damage, feeling a chill from my own fingers. Several more of the creatures arrived, and they made weird, deep-throated, gurgling and clicking noises at each other. I think they were talking to each other. They each grabbed one of his arms or legs and worked together to drag him away. He started moaning in pain as they took him into the fog, and I sobbed and shook my head. It was so horrible. He was still alive as they took him away. I was crying as I sat there. Just then, my phone started ringing, and I jumped up, letting out some kind of startled noise, almost like I was barking. I was so terrified. I was ready to dropkick my own phone for scaring me.
Emily, you alright, baby?
It was my brother. He'd woke up and checked his missed calls from me. I'm at the park and ride. Some guy just got killed. My voice was high and whispery and full of dread. He couldn't understand me, and I had to repeat myself over and over until he did.
I'm coming to get you. I got your location. Stay where you are and call the police,
Zaire said. He had to hang up to use the locator app, but told me to call him while he was on the way if I need to. Just hurry, I told him. He told me he loved me, and he would be there in about 20 minutes. It was a 40-minute drive, apparently, so I told him to drive safely. I looked up and thought I saw movement outside, and I got down between the seats and hid. After a while, listening and terrified, my heartbeat audible in my ears, I looked up out the window, staring wide-eyed out into the night and the fog out there. Slowly lowering myself back down, I got my phone and dialed 911. The operator asked me the bus number, and I didn't know how to check that, so she directed me to the front of the bus, where a vehicle identification number would be too small to read. There, in the corner, there was a bus operation designation. I told her I was on bus 816. "Officers are on the way. Stay hidden," the operator told me. I thought she would stay on the phone with me, but we got disconnected somehow. I looked and saw I really only had one bar of service. I've never seen that before. I don't know why I thought that was funny. It was just so weird that I felt like I was in a horror movie or something. With my phone barely working, I was still quite terrified, and my own laughter sounded crazy to me. Zaire drove crazy fast and got there before the police. I saw the headlights of his Mustang and heard his car, low and wide. I called him and told him to be careful. I could hear how crazy it sounded, but my fear was real. And he listened as I warned him about the creatures in the fog. He drove around the bus, circling it, revving his engine and letting his brakes shriek, honking and making so much noise that even I felt a little intimidated by his display. He pulled up alongside the bus, facing towards the back so that the passenger side lined up with the door of the bus. He opened the passenger door, and I saw his eyes. The first real relief I felt. We were still on the phone, and he told me to simply push on the middle of the bus doors as hard as I could. "It will pop open when you snap the emergency thing." I pushed as hard as I could, and it didn't budge. I braced myself and pushed with my legs, and something did snap, and the doors just swung open, dropping me butt first onto the step in the bus. I got up and leapt into his waiting car and slammed the door. "You smell like sweat." Zaire grinned weirdly, his eyes all crazy with adrenaline.
"Punch it, Chewie,"
I said, my breath a little shaky. We sped out of there and went home. As we left that place behind, I got a call from 911 since we got disconnected. I told them I was with my brother and headed home, and gave them my apartment number when they asked. The next day, 2 police detectives came to our apartment. Zaire had let them in and came into my room and woke me up.
"The cops want to talk to you. They sitting on my couch." "You're Emily Radiance. You called 911 from the North Creek Park and Ride this morning?"
"Yes, I saw a guy get killed. There were these..."
I paused, realizing that if I told them what I saw, they were not going to believe me.
"Anthony Wink, the other bus driver, is missing. And you said you saw someone killed. You can tell us what happened," the other cop said.
"I woke up and he was missing already. It was this other guy, like homeless guy. He was dirty and he had a beard. I saw this gray crawler kill him. There were 3 more and they dragged him away."
I told them. They just sat and listened, not blinking. They just sat and listened, not blinking. I remembered how he was still alive when they took him. I added,
He was still alive when those things dragged him away.
I felt a tear cross my cheek, recalling the worst of it. For a long time, they just sat and looked at me. Then one of them asked, "Is there anything else?" He asked. I just shook my head. When I had nothing else for them, they reluctantly left our apartment. I could tell I was their only lead, and I had barely helped at all. I felt guilty, like I should have known more, should have observed some crucial detail to help them find Anthony Wink. I reached for my headphones, hoping to get some peace from the fresh, awful memory. I got up and searched my room, and then acquired my brother's car keys to go down to his car. I'd lost my headphone, and worse, all my playlists. I sat on the steps to our apartment when suddenly a police forensics van showed up. Confused, I looked up while two police got out and asked me if I was Emily Radiance, the one who had called from the park and ride. They showed me their detective badges and asked me all about last night.
Why you got that look, sweetie?
One of them asked after they had asked me crazy questions.
Two other cops were just here, in suits. They were in my apartment.
I had a disbelieving smirk. The two police looked at each other, and one of them gave me his card, with their officer number on it. "That is strange. We have no idea who came here. This is our case," he told me. "And one more thing." He opened the passenger door and took an evidence bag from the seat. It was my headphones. I must have dropped them when I fled the bus. He handed them to me and nodded knowingly as my eyes lit up. "Thanks." I felt a wash of relief holding my music. Somehow, as they drove away, I felt like that was when it was finally over. Like somehow the terror had lingered into the next day, and only as the fog of fear cleared was I finally safe.